Hello everybody, it's Mike Levin from MikeLevinSEO.com, and I'm not going anywhere. These things are at least going to take place every Friday, so I guess you can kind of think of it as like a Whiteboard Friday, but it's more like a Code with Mike Friday. And all these projects so far have been pretty amorphous in nature. You'd hardly even know that they were running on this Raspberry Pi just sitting out on my desk exposed with nothing but a network cable and a power cable. And who knows, I might have just taken my website down as I did that. But much of what I've been teaching has been absolutely no difference whether you are running on a Raspberry Pi like that or a virtual machine from Amazon Computing Cloud or Rackspace, or if you are running on the old-fashioned rack-mounted servers in co-location centers. It wouldn't make a difference. You could even have been running on your machine that you're actually sitting and working on right here if it was Linuxy or Unixy enough to run the same tools that I'm using for doing the Pipulate project. So, what next? I'm going to make this video about getting back into the mindset because a week is a long time to lose your groove. And first, on a Mac, you've got these wonderful virtual windows that you see me popping back and forth like this. And it's kind of one of the reasons I like the Mac. There are other reasons, like it is a Unixy platform, much different from the utterly proprietary Windows platform, which is unlike nothing else. But if you get used to things on a Mac, you can get used to things on a Linux machine, on a Unix machine, on a Mac, and so you get the idea. And Raspberry Pi is one of those things in the mix, as are a host of other devices. Most things that have some embedded computer smarts these days are running some variation of Unix or Linux. So if you find your way around on those systems, you can find your way around on most anything you encounter. But I'm working on a Mac, and this has this virtual screen thing, so I go like that. I like my first virtual screen to have a terminal. When you open a terminal on the Mac, it is to your local computer. It is not connected to any external computer yet. But the way you see me using it in all my tutorials are by doing SSH to root at my very, very local machine. I can get to it through DNS, which even though you can't reach it through this way, I can get to it by referring to MikeLevinSEO.com, enter, and it'll challenge me for my password, and I'm going to be just pause edit Mike. I'm going to do minimal edits so that I can get this stuff up fast. So I pause ScreenFlow, then I type in my password, and then I make it take it. And now you can see I'm on my local machine, and I can get back to where I was, but what I really want is multiple tabs. So if I do shell, new tab, you can see it's flower key T, or I guess that's apple T. So I want that 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I've been working with 4 open terminal windows, but currently only the first one is connected to the Raspberry Pi through the SSH program. I want to do that with all my other terminals. Now, I could make it so that I don't need to type the username and password every time, and that's what I do when I never have any intention of imaging my SD card of my Raspberry Pi for other people, but I think I might do that, so I'm keeping any keys that are used in key verification security exchanges from off of my Raspberry Pis. So if it's ever hacked, they can get very little. Basically I change the passwords on any external accounts that I'm using, and then I start with an older SD image of the Raspberry Pi, and bam, any insertion of backdoors or any other things that could have been done during the hack are just wiped away. And the heart and soul of the system migrates from system to system merely by virtue of a few GitHubs that you pull down code from elsewhere where everybody's eyeballs have been on it. So if it was corrupted, is kind of seen. And even if it's not seen, you have histories of the project, almost edit by edit. They call it commit by commit histories going back in time. And you can roll back to any of them, so you can go far enough back that you know you were before when you were compromised, and just start building again from there. You were smart about it once, you can be smart about it again, and recreate a small portion of any code base that you might have lost. And that happens. It's like going back versions and backups in your computer software. So anyway, I want to log on that same way in all these other windows. And so did I actually do that? I am. Oh, well, you saw something different. You saw me logging onto one where a key exchange was actually taking place. So I want to go and do that again. And instead of SSHing into Totpaw, I am going to SSH into Mike11SEO.com. And I'll be right back when I have them all logged in. Okay, that's kind of a pain. That's something I think I might look at automating away, even if that becomes platform dependent, even if that isn't something I can use at any machine. I can sit down, at least I can open up 4 terminals and not have to go through the tedious login process. The reason to have 4 terminals, and if here's a keyboard shortcut I'm going to have to remember. I want next tab. So let's see, view, window, select next tab, flower key, right curly bracket. So since I'm going to be working on the Mac so much when I do this, I got to get this keyboard shortcut down where I hold Shift flower and then use the curly brackets. Not very intuitive to me, but nonetheless, that's what I'm going to do. So that's part of our way towards getting back to where we left off. I'm also going to close this a little bit so that I can get that web browser. And I actually want a new version of the web browser, which is tied to my other Gmail account. I pause, I unpause, and now I actually bring this over to this other window, and then I use Zoom, that's Z with 3 O's, to do a little window repositioning. I hate that I have to do this. This is something that's actually even easier on Windows, which does bring up an important point. Actually, to know how big I want this, I want to cd into Pipulate and edit the file that is most often the one that I want right here, which is vim Pipulate. Okay, so I generally wrap these things at 80 characters, so I go so that I know 80 characters is displaying. Let's see if that shows on the window here. Oh yeah, there it is, 80 by 37. I want 80 by 36. And now I know how to position this other window. We don't really need much room in this other window. Minimal room, in fact. Let me move it so that this side is snapped in, and that's almost ideal. But I want this to be a little closer to this window. Okay, good enough. And Control-Shift-B so I can get rid of these guys. Oh, okay, it is not showing them. That's just Chrome's interesting default behavior to reveal them even when you get rid of them. Chrome is a product that's evolving underneath of us as we use it. It's an interesting adventure to watch. So this is Mike11 SEO, not .com, but .local. And this is, in fact, on a port 8080. That is correct. But this web page is unavailable. So this is all just to get back to where we left off when we were last coding. Now you'll remember on this one I do Python Pipulate. Actually, I want to be in that directory, so cd Pipulate. Now I can do Python Pipulate. And that might have some importance because the current directory relative to Python might be whatever directory you were in when you launched the program. So you want to CD into your application directory before you run so that most things are relative to itself. That's sometimes the case with this kind of thing. It's not always the case, but it is the case enough that it's a good practice to always run an interpreter like Python from the directory where your code resides. So you open a terminal, you CD into that location, and then you do Python space the file you were just working on, which is in the first tab. So you can start to see the relationship between things. And we can always see here what's going on. And if we're on tab 2, you can see the hit on the server. It's a much better way to work where you can build debugging into something really easy because you don't have to like run special code tracking software to see what's going on in some value with a task overseeing every task in like some super government spy agency that you run just so that you can catch bugs. No, you do a refresh. You see it come into the terminal because you ran it as a terminal program. Welcome to old school. So getting back to where we were, that's the code that's being run. This is the code being run. And there's a couple other things that are really good to look at because it's still good, for example, to be able to CD into that directory and just see what's in there to remind yourself what's going on. Oh yeah, I have that sample out file. So the files, when you choose a file and then you, let's see, choose file, and you take that file and then you hit this key, that file is going to be dropped into a location called temp, which is where I remember I put it. And just to make sure that that really is happening, I can remove from temp. I do an ls, nothing there. I hit the back arrow. I truly reinstantiate the page. It has no session memory or very little session memory. I choose the file again. I hit that. And now I do an ls. And there is the file where there was not one before. And if I were to less the file, there is the upload with control M's, or I think that's just return, the symbol for return. And you can see there's the question marks. There's 2 rows that have question marks, one after hello world, question mark, spam eggs, question mark. And let's see, the way you get out of less is a lot like Vim. The characters are greatly the same, so Q gets you out. And I think it might even be :Q. Yeah, I think it follows similar EX commands, which is the heritage of VI, which is the heritage of Vim. It all comes from a one-line text editor where they would send these EX commands so that you could do these complex edits with just one character to work with to issue the command. No point and click, no highlighting, just lots of data somewhere, and you having a tiny, tiny little window onto that data. That's where the EX commands came from in VI, and that also seems to be what's used in programs like less to quit and to scroll forward and back through the text. Anyway, that's a lot of digression. Now, we still are in this directory here, and if we look at this other program, you can see now carriage returns are looking right. It now is Python's idea of what line wraps or returns should be in a file, and that's the CSV library for Python, which I'm using in order to load and save CSV files. So you can see the question marks are replaced. Where the question marks were, it now says out from function 1, comma, hello world. And then again on the next line, or I guess the second and third lines, I should say. And so we've got a little bit of decisions to make about where files should go. And that is where my mindset was when we left off a week ago. And that's where I'm going to dive back into coding right now and do another attempt to get 1 or 2 videos like this that move the project fundamentally forward on these Fridays, because I did actually spend a little bit of the morning doing some email stuff, getting my email working. It was not an ideal programming day. So once I got everything working, so that I could be in touch and in communication with my company and have even done something that I needed to do for a client, although my coworker actually did all the hard work on that one. Thank you very much. I have a smaller window to work with than I had hoped to today. It's coming up on 3 o'clock. I'm not going to be staying much past 6 because the weekend starts and we got to get up to the Catskill place with my daughter, and we got to close it up for the season for the most part and give her a chance to be with her summer friends for the last opportunity this season. It's not going to be a 3-day weekend for me, so we want to get as much time up there as we can in. So it's 3 o'clock to 5:30, maybe 6, to get my next thing done, which is going to be the proper organization of the CSV files and how to give the file back to the user and the last few bits to be useful without addressing the large things like Advanced Python Scheduler that I'm going to be using here, and the request object, so that one of the question marks can be reaching out onto the web and getting a piece of information, either from a website with regular expressions to grab the value, or through an API, or through RESTful, XML, or any way that you can go out onto the internet and grab some data. I won't get to that today. Advanced scheduling, functions using the request object way of doing things. And then a third thing I wanted to do was file management. Where do these files go? Can you rename them? Is there something sitting there working kind of like a database, getting you prepared for when the scheduler comes along? Well, both file management and task scheduling are not things I'm going to cram into between 3 and 5. I'm really going to focus on whether file names get preserved, whether they go in the temp directory, whether they go in a new directory I set up that's outside web execution space. And that is going to be the next video, and it's probably going to be another eye-dryingly boring video without a lot of coding, but I'll try and do a little bit. Thanks for joining me, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.